Perfect. All right. So we're going to focus on buy list requisitions and informal requisitions for your ad hoc ordering. We're then going to look at requisition approval and purchase order sending. We'll also have a bit of a chat about auto send, the auto send function. That is something that the guys in Sydney yesterday are having a think about, but we'll talk about that when we get there. We'll have a look at sending your purchase orders, receiving orders, electronic invoices, creating manual invoices, creating credit notes. Then we'll have a look at invoice approval or flagged invoice approval. Then we'll start focusing on a little bit of the account management or kind of your setup and how you can optimize that. We'll have a look at self-managed pricing for those suppliers that do not have their pricing uploaded onto Purchase Plus. We'll then have a look at your buy list management, how to maintain and effectively manage your buy list, as well as a way that you can run kind of a mini tender on the system, as well as getting as many quotes on like-for-like products across your supplier list. We'll then have a look at some reporting and also some recipe management for those that are interested. Lee, we have invoices with all the details matched that are not auto-approved. We can definitely have a look at that, Lee. There are about 6 reasons why invoices can flag. When we get to the invoicing part, if you'd like to shout out, type out, and we can go and have a look at some specific examples in your account if you like. But definitely, we'll have a look at why the invoices flag for sure. All right, let me zoom in here a little bit so because I get it kind of small for you all. All right, so let's log in. I'm going to run this session in my test account because I don't want to start playing around in your real accounts. I might cause some trouble. So test account, here we go. All right, perfect. So what we'll do, we'll start under the main menu, dashboards, dashboard. No silly questions. That's, yeah, exactly right, Ash. Thank you. No, my pleasure. Okay, we're going to start under dashboards, dashboard. Okay, some of you might live in this screen quite often. Some of you might not. It really depends if you use your notifications that you receive via email or you prefer to kind of see that stuff in the system itself. So just to quickly mention these colored boxes across the top. These are documents awaiting action, okay? The green box, requisitions awaiting my approval. If you are a requisition approver, this will note the number of requisitions specifically awaiting your approval. Obviously, for these, you will also receive individual notifications of which within you can actually approve your requisitions within the email if you prefer. Purchase orders not sent. This is for your whole property, okay? So don't panic if yours says, well, yours shouldn't say 110. That's a lot of not sent purchase orders. But this is for the whole property. Okay. Again, invoices flagged. Again, this is for the whole property. So these are these invoices that have some kind of variance. And then the last one, flagged invoices that are specifically awaiting your approval. Now, for these, fortunately, you won't receive an email per invoice. You should just receive a daily email that indicates the invoices that are awaiting your approval. Okay. And just by clicking on these colored boxes, it will take you to the appropriate screen. Just below, we've got some very high level purchasing data this month versus last month, top 10 suppliers, top products, that kind of thing. But as I said, we will spend a little bit of time a little bit later looking at some of the reporting, which will give you much, much more detailed information. Okay, so this is just kind of a quick reference. Just to note, for those of you that missed my spiel at the beginning, the plan is today we are going to take, oh, that's someone else, perfect, Wayne, brilliant. The plan is today, because we've got a long session planned, I think we're going to take a 10-minute break on the hour, every hour, just so everyone has a chance to grab some water and whatnot, okay? All right, so let's jump into the document section of the menu, which is where you will live most of the time in Purchase Plus, right? This is where, yeah, this is your day in, day out kind of stuff, right? So we're going to start in the requisition screen, okay? Now, in this screen, you can see requisitions for all departments, all right? Really important to note that here we are talking about PRs, not POs, okay? And this can be confusing initially for new users. At a quick glance, it looks like a PO number. Really important thing to note, we should not be sending PRs to our suppliers for a couple of reasons. First off, if it's still a requisition, what that means is you haven't got approval for that spend, right? So in theory, you're not allowed to send this order to the supplier until it's been approved. Second, and even more importantly, if you get an invoice come into the system and it's, oh, sorry, Wayne, there we go. The invoice comes into the system and it has a PR number on it instead of a PO number, the invoice will not be able to match to its PO. When an invoice drops into the system, it looks for its PO. So if it has a PR number, it won't match and it'll flag and you'll have to manually match it and all that stuff. So really, really important that we don't give this number to our suppliers. These columns, and it works the same in every document screen, you can move them around, you can make them bigger and smaller, and if you hover over any column header, you can show and hide different columns depending on what is relevant for you. Some of the screens are very information dense, so I definitely recommend setting it up to see only what you need, so you don't kind of overload yourself with unnecessary information. Once you set it up how you like it, those settings will save to your user on your machine. Okay. We can filter these requisitions by state, by date. We can search by requisition number. You can search your name if you only want to see yours. And you can even search by the product contained within the requisition. So I ordered this the other day. Also, a bit of a tip, if you're opening documents, I definitely recommend opening them in a new page. What that means is you don't have to kind of navigate backward and forward too much. So here's our unicorn stakes at $100,000. But yeah, that's the product search you can do in there. All right, last thing to note on this screen, it's only a small thing, but really, really useful. Whenever you hover over any document number, this little document tree will appear. If you click that, it will show you all the documents linked to the selected document. So here we can see this requisition, which created 2 purchase orders, which have been received twice. And then later down the line, when we've invoiced these POs, the invoices will also appear here. Okay. So you can see the whole trail. All right. I think that is it for our requisition screen. So we're going to jump straight in, and we're going to create our first requisition, which is going to be a buy list requisition. Okay. Now, for those of you that are newer to Purchase Plus, I always joke, but I'm kind of only half joking. There's only 2 real secrets to this system, okay? And the first of those is that if you want to perform virtually any action in Purchase Plus, whether that be creating a new requisition, creating a new catalog, a new buy list, running a report, adding a product, creating a new supplier, like pretty much any action is always performed by clicking a green button that has a plus on it, okay? And that will always sit here above the main menu or sometimes around this kind of area in the blue section, all right? So I always say, if in doubt, just click the green button and that's probably what you want it to do, all right? So that's secret number 1. So that's what we're going to do. Now, From the drop-down, we select what kind of requisition we want to raise. And it defaults to a buy list requisition because this is definitely our favorite way of ordering. This is the kind of requisition that offers you price comparison on products, okay? We're going to start with this one, but let's quickly go through the other options, all right? So a My Supplier requisition is just ordering directly from a supplier's catalogue. This is not a particularly efficient way to order because it will display the supplier's entire offering, okay, which means you have to trawl through potentially thousands of products to find the ones that you want. Okay. A requisition, purchase order, or invoice, this is basically a copy function. So what it will do, all it will do is take the product from whichever one of these documents you select, you type in the document number, and it will create a new requisition with these same product descriptions in the system. Punch-out requisition, this is basically, you can use this for your bid food ordering. This will pull you into the bid foods web portal. You continue your bid food order as you normally would, and when you go to finalize your order, it actually sucks all that information back into the requisition in Purchase Plus to continue down the Purchase Plus workflow, to go through the approval and the PO sending and the rest of the Purchase Plus journey. All right. Bidfood do maintain their products on Purchase Plus. The only real benefit of using Punch-Out is that it will show you stock levels, available quantities of products. Stock location is if you're using inventory, which you at Qantas are not, so you don't need to worry about that. And an informal requisition, which is what we're also going to look at today, is basically a free text order. This is the ad hoc stuff, any cleaning services or new equipment or things like that. Basically not for your day-to-day ordering. All right. But as I said, we're going to start with a buy list requisition. So we'll select that, and then from the list drop-down, we're just going to select which of our buy lists we want to purchase from. So I'm going to order from the beverage list today. Your delivery address will be auto set. I believe you all only have one delivery address, although if you've got a couple different ones set up, you can select which one you want to use from the drop down. Delivery date. Now this is an important one. This will always default to tomorrow, okay? Now, the reason I say it's important because this is also when that spend is going to come out of your budget, all right? So just be a little bit more conscious about this at the end of the month. This date should be when you expect the goods or that service to arrive or to be performed. But if it's coming around the end of the month and you want it delivered, for example, today, which we can change it to today. Let's say I want it delivered today, but I want it to come out of August budget because it's an event that's happening tomorrow, but obviously I want the goods here today. That is something that you're going to need to let finance know kind of in a different place. We're probably going to use the comments field for that, just to let them know when you want this spend to come out of your budget, okay? Because by default, they'll take this date. Send to supplier. Okay, it does what it says on the tin. This will default to send. This is what dictates whether Purchase Plus sends a purchase order to your supplier. All right. If we untick this, it means a copy of your PO will not be sent. The only reason really that you would probably untick this if you're doing like a retrospective purchase order, for example, maybe you phoned in an order just like 2 minutes before cutoff. Obviously, you then need to come into Purchase Plus and raise that PO to make sure that spend is registered and you can receive an invoice against the purchase order. But obviously, you don't want a copy to go to the supplier because you probably end up getting double delivery. All right. So normally, you want to leave this ticked unless you're doing kind of a retro PO. Okay. Just for this demonstration, I'm going to untick it, because I do have some live supplier accounts on here and I don't want to accidentally send them some orders. The reference, I don't believe you have a strict convention. I think my understanding is that you just put in a rough description of what it is you're ordering. This reference is actually what goes to the finance team and goes to SUN, so your payment system. So if finance want you to put anything specific in there, just whatever it is they want you to put in there. If you're not putting in anything in there currently, just keep doing what you're doing. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, and it will generate us a new PR number. All right. So we're on PR. I'm just going to take a note of this so we can use this one later. This is 3472. Okay. So because we're doing a buy list requisition, we can see already that we've got a default department and account code in here already. So using a buy list to raise your requisitions, it's already saving you a couple of clicks. You can change. You don't have to use the default department. You can change it. Super, super important for those of you that are approvers, definitely. The department is actually what dictates our approval workflow, okay? So that dictates who is going to approve your order, okay? Oh, there we go. So really, really important you have the correct department selected, otherwise it's going to go to the wrong person for approval. So if I just change the department, when I hit enter, you're going to see the workflow change. There we go. But I'm going to change it back to beverage. Your account codes you can also change. You can type to search the account code. You don't have to search by account code number for your non-financy people. Let's have a look. We've got a question. Let's see. JD, where do we add the comment regarding where the PO comes out of the budget? We're going to look at that in just a tick, JD. It's important to let finance know any extra notes, like if you need it to come out of next month's budget or what have you. And we're going to look at the comments section in just a tick. So in the body of our requisition, we have the products that we've built into our buy list, and as I said earlier, we're going to cover buy list management a little bit later. All right. So all we're going to do is click in the quantity column, and a text box opens. All we're going to do is input the quantity of goods that we want to order. So I'm going to do 6 apples. I'm going to do 1 carton of 30. Really important that we put in the quantity in relation to the pack size. Okay, so if you want 30 pale lagers, you're not going to put in 30 here. You're just going to put in 1 because they're already coming in cartons of 30. I'm going to just input a few more quantities. Great. All right, so actually if I make this a bit smaller, no, I'm actually going to hide the brand because I don't think we're that interested in seeing that yet. Oh, okay, perfect. So we've got some quantities in there. Now at this point you could technically send your requisition, but obviously there are a lot more things to show you. So first off, really important column, this quotes column, okay? What this does is it indicates how many of the suppliers you are linked to on Purchase Plus, how many of those suppliers are quoting on this item, okay? Now, for those of you that are less familiar with the system, it's important to understand that Purchase Plus is not an open market. It's not like an Amazon or an eBay where anyone can just buy from anyone without any kind of prior interaction. Purchase Plus is a little bit more of a Facebook of purchasing, in that you have to kind of like be friends with people before you can start ordering from them, okay? And the reason behind that is because of the nature of the buyer-supplier relationship, in that, you know, you need to open accounts with the supplier, you need to, you know, sign contracts, terms and conditions, a line of credit potentially, all that kind of stuff, right? So of the suppliers that we're friends with or linked with on Purchase Plus, here we've got 4 suppliers quoting on our avocado. Okay? Now, Purchase Plus will always default to the cheapest supplier. Okay? If we want to have a look at the other suppliers and their pricing, all you're going to do is click on the supplier name and have a look here. Oh, you can ignore these two. These are my test account, so it's showing some extra stuff. But these are our 4 suppliers and their prices. Right? If I want to select a different supplier, all I have to do is click on it, and here comes the second secret to Purchase Plus. First one was the green button. The second one is this. In any text box, any of these text boxes up here, whenever you're entering any information or selecting information from a drop down, the save button is enter on your keyboard, right? If you just click away, the system's going to think you've changed your mind and it's not going to save your edit, all right? So enter is a save button, super, super important. So when I hit enter now, it will save that selection. And now this is the supplier that I have selected. So what we can see has appeared now in the premium column. If I make that a bit smaller. In the premium column, I've had, this is, because I've selected a supplier that is not the cheapest, this will give me the total extra money I'm spending because of that supplier selection. All right. Now, a couple other things to note here. In the second line, in our Apple's Red Delicious line, we can see 1 of 5 quotes. Oh, we got someone else. Nishan, perfect. 1 of 5 quotes. What that means is we actually have 5 suppliers that are quoting on this item in the system. However, only 1 of those is available to us to purchase from at the moment. And that's because whoever is managing this buy list has actually decided to block the other 4 quotes on this product for whatever reason. Maybe the quality is not there, or it could be one of many reasons. So in this case, we've only got 1 available option. So if we click on the drop down again, here we'll see our other suppliers, but they do not have pricing listed because they've been blocked. Okay. And again, we'll talk a little bit about how we manage this and tweak our buy list to practically make them foolproof. Okay. All right. If we scroll a little bit to the right, and if you're using a bigger screen than me and less zoomed in than me, you'll fit this all into one screen. We've got a couple of columns here that are by default hidden on your account. So I highly, highly recommend when you go back into Purchase Plus to drop down from any column header in your requisition and make sure these department and account code columns are showing. Now, it may not be much, you may not need to use it, but knowing what it does is really important. So everything on my requisition is going to be coded to the beverage department under this account code. However, if you want one or more of these products to go to a different department and account code, you can select that here. So what I can do is I'll select, maybe this one's going to the food department, and this is actually going to go to a different GL code. Again, hitting enter to save. What that means is everything's going here except this line, which is going to go to a different department and account code. It may be that you don't do cross-departmental or cross-account code ordering, but you can do it if you need to. Last thing to look at on this screen is the order instructions field. Okay, this is a free text field, really useful. Just clicking it, you can type in here anything you like. This will appear on the PO next to this product. Any extra information you want to give your supplier, as it says, it will appear on the PO next to the product itself. So if you want, a loose pack of beer, or you want extra ripe bananas, or you want it in pink, not blue, or the special edition bottle, or what have you, you can pop that in there. And last thing to look at before we submit this requisition is the comment section, and this is really, really useful. If you're not using this regularly, I highly encourage you to get into the swing of putting any additional information here in the comment section. Now, you actually have 2 options. You can do an external comment. I would recommend being a little bit careful with this though, because this comment appears on all POs created from this requisition. The reason I say to be a little bit careful is that obviously our purchase order, we're going to get multiple purchase orders created from this requisition. If this is a supplier specific comment, I would not recommend putting it here because all your suppliers are going to see it and they're probably going to get confused. If it's a general comment, definitely you can put it here, but if it's supplier specific, I would recommend leaving it in the order instructions field that we just saw in the last screen. Okay. The other type of comment is an internal comment. So you just need to tick the box, internal comment. This doesn't go anywhere. It's only for you and your team. So this JD is where I would probably recommend leaving the comment. You can either leave it here in the requisition or in the invoice itself. I'd probably put it on both. Any information for finance to let them know if they need to code things, you know, to a different month or split codes or what have you. All right. The way you can tell it's an internal comment is it's got this little I with like a slash through it, so no one can see it except you. Right. So we're going to go back to the lines, and we have a question. Would that create a new PO? As you're raising this requisition, will that raise different PO for different suppliers? Yeah, it will. Exactly right. And Vinay, is that what you mean? Would that create a new PO with the different suppliers? Yeah. So, and that's the beauty of a buy list requisition. You can just do one document. You can do, if you really want, you can do all your ordering in the one requisition. And depending on how many suppliers you've got selected here, that's how many POs it will spit out. All right. It will indeed, yeah. Change the department for account and any specific product with the same requisition. Oh, okay, Vinay, that's a very good question. So the question is, will this generate a separate purchase order for the products that that appear or that are coded to a different department and account code? No, it won't. It will. This information will appear on the purchase order that is created for this supplier. So if we've got this supplier on a couple of different products, which let's change it so we do. This will create just one PO, and this information will be displayed on that PO. It won't create a separate PO. Okay, so the supplier will see it's going for a different department and whatnot. All right, unless we have any more questions, we, I think, are ready to submit this requisition. So all we did was check our department and account code is as we want. We input some quantities of our products. We changed a couple different suppliers. We coded one item off to a different department and account code. We left some order instructions and some comments. So that is pretty much the most complicated requisition you could ever do. But that is all the possibilities. Like I say, if you're not already making use of the comments tab, definitely keep that in mind, as well as making sure this department and account code column is displayed on your user account. So before we submit that requisition, I'm going to be quiet just for a couple of seconds to give anyone a chance to type any questions they may have before we submit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and submit this requisition for approval. So we can see our requisition hasn't been approved by anybody yet, and it needs to be approved by one or more of these people. Now, your workflows won't have this many people. These are practically all of my colleagues. So if we close that now, if you are not an approver for your own requisitions, at this point you can walk away from your computer, okay? And your requisition approver will receive an email notification. However, if you approve your own requisitions, it will bring you straight through to the approval screen. Okay. Now, as a requisition approver, at this point, I can still edit edit these order details because we haven't finalized anything yet. So if you did want to come in and update any quantities or change any suppliers, at this point you can still do that. All right. We have a question. How does the system cope with products that are the same but have different names? I think you mean described differently in the system. We'll talk a little bit about how Purchase Plus works in the background in terms of product descriptions and whatnot, and how you can optimize getting as many quotes as you can from your suppliers. It is reliant on suppliers using the exact same description. Okay, so we have about 1.25 million products in our master catalog of product descriptions. We have a team that manages that. That's been built over the space of 23 years. So although we're constantly kind of curating that catalog, that occasionally you will find some product descriptions that you think are the same product, potentially a duplicate. But with apples, there are a million different sizes and weights and whatnot of apples. So what we will talk about is how you can, increase the number of quotes by getting your suppliers to quote on the same descriptions. We'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. So in this approval screen, we obviously have the approve button. We have a cancel button, which basically throws it in the bin, and we have a decline button. Now, really, the only time I see the decline button being used is if a requisition has been submitted to an incorrect department. As a requisition approver, if you receive a requisition for approval that is obviously not for you because it's been submitted to the wrong department, you shouldn't just change the department up here. That will not reroute it through the workflow. You will need to decline this requisition, which sends it back to the user, and they can update it and resubmit it. Okay, so really important. That's the only time I really see the decline button being used. But we're happy with this order, and we're going to go ahead and approve it. Okay, here we go. So it's been approved, and oh wow, we generated quite a few POs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as you can see, we generated 5 purchase orders from that one requisition, 1 per supplier. Okay. So at this point, depending on your internal process, at this point, the newly generated purchase orders have not been sent. Okay. Now again, depending on your internal processes, depends on who needs to send those purchase orders. It might be that the approver sends them, or it may be that the requisition raiser sends them. If you receive an email to say, yep, your requisition's been approved, please send your PO. Okay. But we'll have a look at well, you know what, we'll actually send these right now. I'm going to open that up here. So I'm going to send, oh, I wanted to send all of them, not just, okay. Also want to send these. Oh, there we go, done. One thing to note that I did mention earlier that I had a chat with everybody down in Sydney about was the ability to auto-send purchase orders. What that means is that once a requisition has received its final layer of approval, it will send upon approval. Okay, so you would be able to skip this sending part. The only functionality you lose by having auto send turned on is the ability to consolidate purchase orders. So if you've got multiple purchase orders for the same supply, you can use the consolidate function to smush them all together. Obviously, if you've got auto send turned on, you can't do that because the POs have already been sent off. So I highly recommend having a chat internally about whether auto send turning on auto send might be a valuable thing for you at your organization. We can do it by department, but we do normally recommend to keep some kind of a continuity across your accounts, that if we do it for one department, we do it for all departments. But if you want that setting turned on, you're going to want to let your finance team know. I'm going to be showing them how to do that later on today. Okay, we have a question. When doing a requisition from the same supplier but different account codes, will there be different purchase orders raised for different accounts? No, there won't be. That information stays on that requisition. So I think I kept one open. So here we go. This is the purchase order generated for the supplier training account supplier. What we can see, everything is coded to the header department account code, except for that one line that we coded off differently, and that information is contained within that same PO. Okay, so it doesn't generate a new purchase order. It generates the same purchase order, but that information is contained within here. If we hit the print button, we can see what it looks like. So what we can see is everything. This goes to food, so we can see the food department here, and the account code, and then here's the beverage department, and this will go to the account codes in the header. Okay. Hey, Jeremy, are you having some problems? Oh, I'm going to mute you, I'm afraid, Jeremy. Sorry. Okay. Perfect. So, oh, there we go. Let's go back here. So that's a buy list requisition. Let's have a look now at an informal requisition. So I really recommend that buy lists is how you are doing the vast majority of your ordering. It's definitely the most efficient way because you're only looking at products that you want to see. It also offers you price comparison, and it's also a really, and like I said, we're going to discuss later, it's also a really efficient way of getting multiple quotes from your suppliers and running a mini tender, and you can do that all just by using your buy list. So if you're not using your buy list regularly at the moment, we're going to have a chat about best practice in terms of buy list setup and whatnot a little bit later. We've got a question from Vinay. If we add a product to the buy list from supplier's catalog, would it refresh automatically if suppliers change product name, code, description, and pricing? Or do you have to keep updating the buy list whenever the catalog is updated? Really good question. So if a product changes description, you will need to go and add that new product description to your buy list, because in Purchase Plus, descriptions are fixed. They can't be edited, and there's lots of not very interesting reasons for that. All product descriptions are linked to a PP product ID, which we'll talk about a bit later, and that is the unique identifier for a product. So if a supplier changes slightly a product, for example, maybe they're selling a loaf of bread instead of 250 grams, it's now 220, they will actually have to use a new description for that. So that would need to be, you would need to go and update your buy list for that. However, product code and pricing, that will auto update. So for example, Bidfood update their prices every single day, and that pricing update automatically filters into your buy list. Okay, the same as product code as well. If they update a product code listed next to a product, that will automatically update for you, and it's all instantaneous. So if a supplier updates pricing now, in like literally 3 seconds, that price update will be available for you to see, and it will auto kind of update your buy list. Yeah, really good question, Vinay. Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and raise an informal requisition, and then we're going to take a quick break, unless we have any more questions. Mind adding a new item to the list. JD, what we're going to do is actually have a look at buy list management in a little while, because that's kind of its own separate function. So if you don't mind, we'll have a look at what descriptions and whatnot you use when adding to your buy list when we cover the buy list management, if that's okay. So let's raise a new requisition. This time from the drop down, we're going to select informal requisition. Right? You shouldn't need to be using this too often because this is really much more ad hoc stuff. So yesterday they were telling me they use this for like floor cleaning services and that kind of thing, right? So we'll select informal requisition from the drop down, and then all the rest of this is exactly the same before. So I'm not going to go through that again. Okay, so straight away we can see the difference. It's basically an empty document, all right? So first off, we've got to select our department. I'm going to select the beverage department just because I know I'm on the workflow on that one. And again, we're going to select the account code. Maybe I've got like a replacement or something. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, perfect. All right, in the body of our requisition, we need to start adding product or service lines into our requisition. So no surprises what we're going to click, the green plus button. Now, this is one thing I see people getting wrong. In this kind of refresher training, this is the one thing I see consistently that people do. So if you've been making this mistake, I'm just about to save you hours of time. So when we go to add a product, the temptation is to click the plus button straight away. Don't do that, okay? What that means is you're going to create a brand new product description every time, which is kind of time consuming. What we're going to do here is search for a product description from our master catalog. All right. As I said, we've got 1.25 million product descriptions in the system. So the chances are what you're looking for already exists, okay? So let's do floor cleaning. Perfect. So yeah, if there's a description in here already that you can use, awesome, let's use it. Like, you don't need to create a new description every time, okay? So let's do floor cleaning machine. There we go. All right, so once you've found the description you want, all you need to do is input your quantity, unit price, I think they cost about that much, unit price exclusive of GST, so not including GST, and then here we're going to input our GST percentage, which is either 10 or 0. Okay. Then from the drop down, we're going to select our supplier. I recommend just searching because these drop downs are not infinite. They'll only show you the first 50 results, so it's just easier to search for them. So once you've filled that out, just hit enter to save, and that product description disappears, and it's now on our requisition. All right. So let's add another product, green plus button. Remember to search first, always search first. What else are we going to do? Concrete floor polish or something like that. In the meantime, we have a question. Will the lounges only be able to use suppliers that we already have set up in Sun? Yes, that's a really good question, Lee. So lounges will only be able to use suppliers that you've set up in Purchase Plus, right? And the finance team are the only people that have the ability to set up new suppliers. So the idea is that first you will set them up in Sun to make sure you've got your vendor code or your supplier code, and then you'll set them up in Purchase Plus with that vendor code in there so the system knows where the money's going when the invoice comes out of the system. That's something we're going to cover in the finance training a bit later. All right, so we searched for our concrete floor polish. I don't even know if that's a thing, but okay. And we can see there were no descriptions found. That means we now need to create our description, all right? And this is the time where we're going to click the green plus button, all right? So here we go. So first what we'll do, we'll select our supplier. I'm also going to get this from Bunnings. Really important you put a category. Don't worry too much about subcategory, but category is really important because what it means is a core do a lot of reporting and stuff like that, and they want to know kind of what category of stuff you're buying. I'm going to put this as this is normally the hardest bit. Let's go with, I'm going with building and construction, whatever. Okay. Brand, if your item has a brand, the item description will populate from your search. So update this if you need to. Item size and item measure, item sold quantity, and item sold pack name. Now, this is how your item is measured. For example, if it's a 1 liter bottle or tub or whatever, you can put that in there. And if it comes in a 3-pack or, you know, a 12 case or something like that, you can input that here. If you leave these fields blank, it will just say each of one, and it's just like an individual thing. You can also do by, if it's a service, for example, you could do it by the hour. That's something that came up yesterday. If it was a service that you're paying by the hour, you can list this as an hour, and then in your quantity, you would put how many hours you're contracting this person for. But mine's 1 liter of concrete polish, so I'm going to leave that like that. All right. Manufacturer, you don't need to worry about. There's only one option, and that's a test one. Quantity, how many you want. So I'm going to order 2. My unit price, let's just say it's $10 each with 10% tax, and we'll hit save. You can now see our concrete floor polish has been added to our requisition, and the cool thing about this is now we've created that description that will save on your Qantas Lounge account. All right, so once you created a description, it will save for later use. So if I go in and click the plus button and I now search for concrete floor polish, we can see it's in the system. So again, I always see this mistake made is not searching for existing product descriptions when doing informal requisitions. Definitely search. You can save yourself a lot of time. Okay. Last thing to note, so everything else works exactly the same with these different department and account codes and order instruction fields, the comments. The only additional thing I would add on this kind of requisition is the attachments field. If you have to get multiple quotes for a service or an item, or you have some email, like pertinent email information to do with this requisition, I highly, highly recommend it being attached in here with the green plus button. You can attach literally any file type except an exe file or an install file. So you can attach, you know, a spreadsheet or a PDF or a Word document, whatever you want. What that means is that document is then archived here in Purchase Plus, and you can delete that email or shred that bit of paper because it's here in the system. Purchase Plus, it really should be your one truth, your one place to go for all your information to do with purchasing. You should be able to find anything to do with purchasing in Purchase Plus. So you don't have to physically archive documents and all that kind of thing, which means, one, you're saving paper, so you're saving trees instead of printing stuff out and whatnot. It also means you'll save money and office space on archive storage. All right. So 2280. Okay, perfect. I think unless anyone has any questions, we're ready to submit this requisition and then take a quick break. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and submit this order, and we'll see now it will only generate one purchase order because both of our lines contain the same supplier. I'm going to go ahead and approve that requisition. And here we've got our PO generated, which is PO267. 27274. And that's 2620 and 262. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and send that. Perfect. All right. So I think we're going to take just a really quick break. Let's reconvene at 11:20 on the dot, if that's all right. What we'll then look at after the break, we'll start with the receiving part of the system, and then we'll have a look at invoicing in all its forms: manual, paperless, flagged invoices, and all that kind of stuff, right? So everybody, I will see you all back here at 20 past the hour. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So, in the first part, we covered the requesting part of the system, the first part of the 3 R's, the requesting, receiving, reconciling. So, before we move on to the receiving part, we're just going to have a really quick look at how to send your purchase orders if one auto send is not turned on, and if your approver is not sending your purchase orders for you. If you as a requisition raiser need to log back into the system, we'll go to the Documents Purchase Order screen, and then to the Not Sent tab. You can locate your purchase orders by searching for the purchase order number, and then you can either send them individually by using the little paper aeroplane here on the right hand side, or you can multi-select and hit the send button. At this point, if AutoSend is not turned on, at this point we can consolidate purchase orders for suppliers. If you've got multiple purchase orders for the same supplier like we have here, we can tick them and hang on, and use the consolidate button just here to consolidate our purchase orders. Now, as before, when we coded off different lines to different account codes, if the purchase orders are for different account codes, that information is still maintained. So what we can see here, this James Squire has been ordered 3 times. The first one is coded to the header account code, and the second ones are coded to these different account codes. So it does maintain that information there. All right. Perfect. Okay, so let's move on to the receiving part of Purchase Plus. And this, as we talked about, this is a very small but very, very important part of the system. So let's search for our PO. So your purchase order's gone to the supplier, a day or 2 or however long passes, and the goods come in. You need to receive them. So what we're going to do is search for our purchase order number, 2674. Hopefully you will have a PO number on the invoice that you receive with your goods, but if you don't have a PO number, you can search for your PO either by supplier or by your name, or however you want to search for it. Okay, so to receive this purchase order, we're going to click on my favorite icon in all of Purchase Plus, and that is the little truck icon. Okay, now the blue truck indicates that nothing of this purchase order has yet been received. We do have a couple other different colors. The green truck indicates that everything on this purchase order has been received. And down here, if we scroll down, oh, no, maybe not here. And the yellow truck means it is a partially received order, which means there's something on back order for this. And we'll talk a little bit about back orders and whatnot in just a tick. But I'm going to go and receive this PO. So I'm just going to click on the little truck icon, and what this is going to do is generate a goods received note, or a GR note. Okay, so this information is populated from our PO. So we can see our floor cleaning machine, we ordered 1, we haven't received any yet, we're waiting to receive 1, and in the final quantity column is where we need to input how many we're actually receiving. Okay, now Purchase Plus lives in an ideal world where you receive everything you order first time round. So it will always default to the full remaining quantity. Okay. However, in this example, let's imagine I received my floor cleaning machine, but I didn't receive my floor polish. So in this case, I'm just going to click in the quantity column and update the quantity to 0 or whatever quantity I actually received. And really, really important, again, to hit enter to save. This is a really good example to show you. Let's imagine I change this quantity to 0 and I don't hit enter to save and I just click somewhere else. It will revert back to the original quantity. So really, really important hitting the enter button to save. Okay. Now at this point, if you are only receiving the item, all you need to do is click on the green receive button. If the invoice is already in the system, you'll see it up here, and you won't have an invoice button here, and you can just receive it. If, however, you're manually entering an invoice and you're doing that now, you can hit the green plus invoice button, which will also do the job of the green receive button. Okay, but I'm not ready to input my invoice yet, so I'm just going to click the green receive button. And what we'll see now, if I go back and look at my PO, my little truck has gone yellow. And that is because I still haven't received my floor polish. Okay? So there are two scenarios of what can happen now. All right? We've obviously got our concrete floor polish on back order. Now, every supplier works slightly differently. Some suppliers do not fulfill back orders, some do. What's really important is if a supplier does not fulfill back orders and they just ask you to place a new order, we will need to let the system know that. We shouldn't leave it with this in this kind of back order state. If that back order is not coming, those goods or those services are not coming because you've told the supplier you don't want it anymore, or they just don't do back orders, you will need to go in and close the purchase order. Okay. The reason being is that if you leave it in this kind of partially received state, the finance team will continue to accrue for the missing items, okay, until you let the system know that those items are not coming. And we close the purchase order with this yellow close button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, okay? Warning, you cannot reopen a closed purchase order. Okay, so just be extra sure that this is the PO you want to close and that you really want to close it, because you can't undo this action. You'd have to go and raise a new requisition from scratch. All right. But in this case, we're not going to close the purchase order because this back order is coming. We actually want to receive those remaining items. So what we're going to do, let's imagine our floor polish has now arrived. All we're going to do is click on the little truck again. And what that's going to do is generate us a new receiving note. And what it says is, okay, so this floor cleaning machine, we already received one, so we're not waiting to receive any more. And it's just now the floor polish that we're waiting to receive. Now, really important here as well, we can receive decimals. So, for example, if you've ordered 5 kilos of steak and 5.5 turn up, it is important that you update this to the actual amount. The reason being is that this number is one of the numbers that the invoice three-way match works with. So it's important that this number is accurate. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and receive my floor polish, and then what we will see is that my truck has now gone green, which indicates I've received all of my products. And you can see these two separate receiving notes, which indicate that, yeah, I've received them in two goes. And that is the receiving process. There's not much more to it than that. Just that it is received accurately in the system. And then if there are any back orders that are not going to be fulfilled, that those purchase orders are closed. Okay. So not much more to look at in the receiving part of this session. I'm going to be quiet just for a few moments in case any of you have any questions you'd like to pop in the chat. JD and Vinay both ask about what happens if pricing updates, pricing on the invoice is different from the PO. That is actually managed as part of the invoicing, as part of the invoicing piece, which we're going to have a look at in a moment. If you update the price on an invoice, it will not affect the pricing in the system, because the pricing that's in the system is actually controlled by the supplier. Okay, so we'll cover what happens when the invoice value is different from the PO value in just a second. If I'm quiet for too long, please let me know, because it means I've forgotten to unmute my mic. All right. So far we've covered the requesting piece, so the requisitioning part, which includes also the approvals and the sending of the POs and all of that. We've just looked at the receiving part, and now we're moving on to the reconciling piece, so the invoicing part. We're going to start with manual invoices, okay, which is going to be phased out almost entirely with this new ability to send any invoice into the system and it dropping in and matching to its purchase order and whatnot. You may always need the ability to create a manual invoice in case you're in a rush to get something into the system or anything like that. So let's look at that. Now, it may seem the temptation is to go to the invoices screen. Okay, we're not gonna do that. We need to raise our invoice against our receiving note. Okay, we want to create our document from the receiving note so it pulls all the information across. You shouldn't be raising in or creating invoices from the invoices screen. Okay, really, really important. So I'm going to click on the receiving note that I want to invoice against. So let's go in and have a look which one this was. So this was my floor polish. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to click the green plus invoice button, and I'm going to literally copy across the information from my paper or my PDF invoice in here. Now, really important that you copy the invoice number exactly with any letters, dots, dashes, slashes, asterisks, you name it, the invoice number needs to be exact. The reason being is that's what stops any duplicate invoices dropping into the system. So really, really important. Invoice date, invoice total, including tax, so that was $22, and the tax was $2, and then we'll hit save. Okay, so what we can see, this information in the header, the department and account code information, this is what's come from our purchase order. And then this information here, the invoice totals, that's what we just input. And this is the value that's going to be paid to your supplier. Okay. In the body of our invoice, this information is pulled through from the PO, and this is what we were expecting to pay. Okay. Now, what we can see with the balancing lines here in the middle of the screen, it's all green. What that means is the total of the invoice is what we were expecting to pay, so it all balances. Okay, which means we don't need to make any adjustments at this point. We want to attach a copy of our physical invoice here in the attachments tab, exactly the same as we did in the requisition screen. Okay, you can also leave comments on your invoice documents. You may want to leave the comments about this going into, like when we talked about splitting the budget, you can leave these comments here as well. So only when it's balanced will you see here the complete button. And then what it will do now, it will give us a little message to say that that invoice is now reconciled. It is automatically reconciled because the invoice matched exactly with our PO. Okay, so that's an ideal scenario. But let's have a look now at an example where the invoice does not match what we were expecting or what the PO said. So I'm going to go and raise an invoice against my other receiving note. Okay, and this is for my floor cleaning machine, so I'm going to click the green plus invoice button. So again, I'm going to input my invoice number with any dots, dashes, whatever, my invoice date, my invoice total including tax, and my tax total. Just one thing to note, we are now talking about dollar amount for tax total. We're not talking about a tax percentage like we do on the requisition. The reason being that somehow, and I still don't understand how, but some suppliers calculate their tax differently or their GST differently. So here we're talking about a dollar value to make sure it all balances. Okay, so same as before, our department and account code information has come from our PO. This is the number that's going to our supplier, and in the body of our invoice, this is the information from the purchase order. This is what we're expecting to pay. And what we can see here is it does not balance. So this total is different from this total. So what we have to do, and Vinay and JD, this is where we do our adjustments. We need to look on our invoice, what is different in the body. Oh, excuse me. So it's either going to be a quantity issue or a price issue. So if I look at my invoice now, it's actually a price issue. So I was expecting to pay $2,600 for my floor cleaning machine. In actual fact, it came in at $3,000. So I'm going to update this unit price and hit enter. And we can see now our invoice balances, and we're able to attach and complete this invoice. So we have a question. Nishan, it's important to go from receiving notes because we need to raise an invoice against the goods that we've received. If you try and create an invoice from the Invoices screen, it's going to give you a blank invoice document. You're going to have to input the department, account code, product information, and then you're going to have to link it manually to the PO. That invoice will always flag because it won't match. Yeah, so that's why it's important, because we're linking this invoice to the receiving note, which is in turn linked to the PO and the requisition. Okay, so it's all part of the workflow. If you just create an invoice from scratch, it's not linked to any document, so it can't perform the matching that it needs to. Okay, so really, really important. Always raise any manual invoices from the receiving note. Perfect. Okay, so we've adjusted the unit price here, and you would rinse and repeat for any other products that need an adjustment or quantity adjustment. Okay. Once it's balanced, as I said, we can attach and complete our invoice. Now, this time it's going to give me a message to say your invoice has or does not match the associated document. What that means is this invoice has now flagged. Okay, the reason being is we only got approval for $2,600 worth of spend, and actually the invoice came in at $3,300. So we're not, because that doesn't match what was approved at the requisition stage, we now need to reapprove this invoice. All right. Flagged invoices look for operational and financial approval. So normally that will sit with a HOD and someone in the finance team. Okay. Now, invoice approvals. So let's have a look here. So we're in invoices and flagged invoices. These invoices you're going to get a daily notification about. All right, you're not going to get a notification about each individual invoice. So in the flagged invoices screen, it automatically defaults to invoices only awaiting your approval, okay, because they're only the ones you're really interested in, okay? Now, this is definitely one of the screens that I would recommend having set up how you like it, especially having the PO amount and the invoice amount kind of next to each other, because it may be that just using this screen that gives you enough information to approve the invoice. If I'm happy to approve the invoice, and I have the approval rights, you will see this blue approve button. You will normally see one or the other. Okay, I can just hit this approve button. However, I prefer not to approve my invoices from this screen if I am an operational approver. Okay, I actually like to approve my invoices here from this flagged invoice lines tab. Now, not a lot of people realize that this exists, so this might change your life. Now, this screen only highlights the lines on an invoice that have caused the flagging. So you could potentially have an invoice with 50 lines and only 1 or 2 of them are causing the flagging. And to go in and manually compare that PO and invoice document, that's going to take you ages. This tab takes the work out of it for you. So what we can see, top line is our floor cleaning machine. We can see on our PO, it came in at $2,600, but actually on the invoice it was $3,000. Okay, so it's asking if we're happy to approve that, and if I have approval rights, I will see this blue tick in the far right, and I can approve just that line. If that is the only flag line on the invoice, then that will give my approval, and it will move on to the financial approval for financial approval on the invoice. Okay. Same goes in the received. So you can see the invoice quantity versus the received quantity. So here we can see this gas bill, well, there was no PO. So we couldn't have received because that you can't receive if there's no PO. So this would be like your contracted services where there's an invoice in the system but no PO. So I'm happy to pay that and that one, that's fine. You may see sometimes an example like, oh, that's a funky example. Let's go another page over. All of these, hang on. I need to go to page 15. Okay, this, for example, this repairs to room 101. First off, the unit price and the invoice, the PO price don't match. But here we also have oh, no, here we go. All right, this one, that's fine. For example, when they've invoiced you but you haven't received it, it could be because there's no PO, or it could be if there's a PO in the system, someone's forgotten to receive that. Or, for example, Bidfood is a good example of this. Bidfood actually sends their invoices into Purchase Plus as their trucks leave their depot in the morning. So you will always get your invoices before you get the goods. So in the morning, you may come into several flagged Bidfood, several or many flagged invoice lines because they've invoiced you, but you haven't received the goods yet because they're still on the way in the truck. Throughout the day, as you start receiving those goods in the system, these invoices, as long as there's no discrepancy in price, they will start to automatically reconcile. All right? They normally say leave flagged invoice approval till later in the day because it could just be that, yeah, you haven't received those goods yet because they're still on their way to you. All right. All right, so that is flagged invoice approval and the flagged invoice lines tab. So this is one of my favorite tabs in Purchase Plus. So before we move on to looking at paperless invoices, I'm just going to be quiet just for a couple of seconds in case anyone has any questions to pop in the chat with regards to any more manual invoicing questions or flagged invoice questions. And we have a question. If the line invoice approved hang on. If the line invoice, will that invoice approve the whole PO? JD, I think what you mean, if it's only one line on the invoice that has flagged and you approve that line, it will reconcile the whole invoice. I hope that answers your question. Please let me know. Yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah. But yeah, if there are multiple flag lines on an invoice, they will all need to be approved before that invoice will reconcile. Yeah. Obviously, if you've got an issue with an invoice, you're going to need to contact your supplier about that, and it may be that they send you a new invoice, or they might send you a credit note. So I'll tell you what, before we look at paperless invoices, let's have a look at how to create a credit note. I think that's probably a good idea. Okay, so I want to create a credit note for my, was it this one? No, it was my other one. Let's have a look here. Hang on. I want to go back to, was it this one? Or was it this one? I want to create a credit note for my floor polish. Yeah, it's this one. Okay, so for exactly the same reason that we create the invoice from the goods received note, we're going to create the credit note from the invoice. Okay, again, the reason being, you always get a credit note in relation to an invoice, so it's important that we link those documents, as well as for the fact that we want it to pull through all this information, so we don't have to enter it all manually and then manually link it. Right? We want to link it from the beginning. So from within the invoice itself, we're going to click on the green plus credit note button. And like we did for the invoice, we're going to enter our credit note number. Again, any dots, dashes, asterisks, all that stuff. We'll our credit note date, our credit note total, including tax, and our tax total. And hit save. Perfect. Okay, so this looks pretty much like an invoice document, and it works in pretty much the same way. Okay, so again, we've got our information that's come from our invoice, which in turn has come from our PO, which has in turn come from our requisition. And here in these two fields, this is the amount you're going to get a credit on. So we can see in the balance lines that this total does not match with the total in the body of our credit note. So all we need to do here is tell the system what quantity of this product we are getting the credit on. So in this case, it's actually only 1 bottle of floor polish I'm getting credit on. So I'm going to input my quantity as 1, hit enter to save, and then we can see our credit note has balanced. At this point, we would again attach a copy of our credit note here, potentially leave any comments, and then release our credit note. And that is it. That's all there is to credit notes. It's really, really simple. All you do is input the quantity of the goods that you're getting your credit on. Not much more to it than that. Perfect. All right. So again, I'm just going to be quiet just for a tick for anyone to ask any questions about credit notes or the credit note process before we move on to looking at paperless invoices. All right. Perfect. So just in my test account, I'm in the Invoices screen. Just something to note here. Let's have a look at paperless invoices that come directly from your suppliers that have integrated with Purchase Plus. And also when you start scanning and sending or just sending any invoices from your informal suppliers or your non-core preferred suppliers, it's going to work in exactly the same way. So one thing to note here is in the invoice fur column, this will display the person that entered the invoice into the system if it was a manually created invoice, or if it says something like Zeus Paperless Invoice Auto Processor or SPL Paperless Invoicer, that indicates that this supplier has integrated with Purchase Plus. And if it says Elements Administrator, that means it's one of the ones that you've scanned or just sent straight into the system. Okay, so let's go and have a look at one of these invoices. I'll open it in a new page. Okay, and it looks exactly the same as a manually entered invoice, except that it will always automatically balance because the supplier has updated these unit prices. And we have an e-invoice view link. So if we click on that, it will show us a copy of the actual invoice. Oh, this is a test one. Okay, that's a terrible example. Let's try a different one. That test one obviously didn't work. Let's try a Zeus one here. Okay. And there we go. So in this case, the supplier has integrated with the PDF method, which means that you will see a copy of the actual invoice. So the bid food invoices look exactly like this. Reward hospitality, it looks like the invoice you receive in paper. You may sometimes see invoices that look a little bit like a PO, and the only thing that means is that the supplier has integrated their systems directly with Purchase Plus using an API, which means that the data comes through just in a standard template format. So it doesn't actually look like their normal invoices, but it is still a legal tax document. It's still legally recognized as an invoice. So that's the only reason they might look a little bit different. So I think it was Lee that asked earlier about invoices flagging even though there's no variance. Okay, so let's have a look at that. I would direct you all to, hang on, I've got loads of tabs open, to the Help Center, just for reference. I spent a little bit of time investigating this and wrote a document called Why Invoices Flag. Okay, so because you're never going to remember all the reasons off the top of your head, but the most common one is, so obviously if there's a unit price discrepancy, if there's received quantity discrepancy, if there's total value variance, it will flag, and also if there's no PO, it will also flag. If the invoice hasn't managed to match to its PO for whatever reason, maybe a PR number was given instead of a PO number, then it needs to be manually matched. But I would imagine that the reason, I think Lee mentioned earlier, that it's flagging is because the products are unlinked, okay? And you may have seen this, so let's go and find an example that looked a bit funky. Okay, so if an invoice is flagged and you can't work out why, because there's no variance, or it says there's no PO value, but it's linked to a PO, what that means is the product lines have not matched to the PO. So what that means is, even if you've got your PO with all these products on, for whatever reason, and normally it's because there's been a product code change by the supplier, you will need to manually link these products to the products on the PO. So all you need to do is click on where it says unlinked, and there's no PO linked to this one. It will give you here a list of the products from your PO, and you would just match them to these lines, okay? What it will do then, it will register that this product is the same as this product on your PO, and then it will rerun the three-way match, and if it all matches, it will automatically reconcile. But that is more likely if it looks like it matches but it's not matching, it's probably because your products are unlinked. But definitely, if you get any invoices and you can't work out why they're flagged, definitely refer to this document, because these are the only reasons invoices can flag. So it has to be one of these six things. So you save yourself some brain ache trying to work it out. All right, that is paperless invoicing for those suppliers that are not integrated with Purchase Plus. So I don't know about for the rest of you Qantas lounges, but in Sydney at least, they estimate they're receiving about 80% of their invoices directly from those integrated suppliers, which is a pretty good percentage. We look for about 70-80% of paperless invoices. Now that remaining 20 and 30% of invoices that you've been manually inputting, you will be able to send directly into the system. But as I said, wait for instruction from your finance team, and they will provide you with your new invoicing emails that you can give to your suppliers and get them to send them straight into the system, or you can forward them yourselves. Yeah. All right, so that is the 3 R's done: the requesting, receiving, and reconciling part of the system. So what we're going to have a look at next, although it's we won't take a break just yet. The next thing we've got on the agenda is, good question, I believe it's self-managed pricing. Yeah, self-managed pricing. Okay. Before we get onto self-managed pricing, we're going to have a little look at the supplier list, and just as there's some interesting information in here which relates to self-managed pricing. Once we've had a chat about our suppliers, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll move on to your kind of account management setup, that kind of thing. But before we do that, again, I'm just going to be quiet just for a couple of seconds in case anybody does have any questions about invoice flagging or the linking of products, or paperless invoice stuff. So pop any questions in the chat. Okay, so we are now looking at our supplier list and suppliers, my suppliers. And this is a list of all the suppliers linked on your account, okay, your friends list, so to speak. So you'll notice a little difference between a couple of the suppliers. So the suppliers that have a star in front of their name, they are market boomer suppliers, and a lot of these are actually a core preferred suppliers as well. But the star does not mean they're a core preferred. What it means is they are signed up to Purchase Plus, they have a log on, they update products and pricing and all that kind of thing, and potentially have also integrated for paperless invoicing. Okay. The suppliers that do not have a star by their name, we call these informal suppliers. These are your local guys, the guys that are not on Purchase Plus, but you still need to order from. Okay, these guys can't log into the system, and they cannot input products and pricing into the system because they don't have an account. All right. Email POs still go to them in the same way, but they just don't have any access to Purchase Plus. Right. So for the market boomer suppliers, if you click on their name, and I'm just going to search for my test account, Supplier Zeus. If you click on the name, what you will actually see is a list of all their products and pricing. Okay, an important thing to note here. Oh, okay, let's go on to the next page. An important thing to note here is this column called supplier managed, and this indicates that this product and price is actually coming from the supplier account. Okay. For these, oh, wrong screen, oh, so many tabs. For these suppliers, these informal suppliers, these guys that do not log into Purchase Plus, if you order from them regularly, you may wish to build their product and pricing information into the system to use in the same way as you do your market boomer product and pricing. So if we click on this supplier's name, what we can see here, we do actually have some product and pricing information built in, but we can see it's not supplier managed, which means it's actually self-managed pricing that we upload on our account to use. Now, obviously, the difference being is that this is under our control. So if there are any changes to products or prices, that is our responsibility at the property to keep that product and pricing information maintained. Okay, so again, you may wish to have an internal conversation about this, about who manages and maintains this self-managed pricing. It may just be the creator, or it may be someone from purchasing, or it may be someone from finance even. That's kind of up to you, internal discussion to have. All right. So just that's something to note if it's supplier managed pricing or not. Okay. So I think it's about time for another break. What's the time now? 12:02. Okay, shall we meet back here at 1/4 past, unless anyone has any questions before we take a quick break? Okay, everybody. Perfect. All right, so after the break, we'll have a look at some of your account setup and account management. We'll be having a look at self-managed pricing, how we can get quotes, competing quotes between our informal suppliers products and our formal suppliers products. And then we'll have a look at really what is the key to Purchase Plus, which is your buy list management, and how we can make our buy list kind of foolproof, as foolproof as is possible, as well as how we can use our buy list to run a mini tender and to optimize the number of quotes we're getting from all of our different suppliers on our on our buy list. All right, so we'll meet back here at 1/4 past. So yeah, that's 12 minutes break. Thanks, everyone. All right. So before we jump into self-managed pricing and buy list setup and all that kind of stuff, does anyone have any questions about the supplier, the different kinds of suppliers, and what that means in Purchase Plus? Okay, I think we're all good to go then. All right, so as I mentioned before, your day-to-day in Purchase Plus is spent in the document section of the menu. However, when we're talking about account setup, stuff in terms of buy lists and self-managed catalogs, we do that under the catalog section of the menu, and we're going to go to self-managed pricing. So again, self-managed pricing is for those suppliers that are not on the system, for maybe your small kind of boutique local suppliers or any kind of non-Accor preferred suppliers, those guys that are not on Purchase Plus and do not have a star by their name on the system, right? So, like with everything in Purchase Plus, to create a new self-managed catalog, we're going to click on the green plus button. We'll name the catalog. I highly recommend calling it self-managed and then the supplier name potentially. You can technically call it anything you want, but to kind of avoid any confusion further down the line, that's kind of convention I would stick with. So we are going to do, which supplier are we going to do? We're going to do this Parramatta Seafood. And then from the supplier drop down, we're going to search our supplier that we want to link it to. Remember, we're doing this by supplier because we're linking this pricing to this supplier. So we'll hit enter to save, and I'm actually going to delete this other Parramatta Seafood one. There we go, perfect. All right, so once we've created the catalog or the folder, so to speak, I'm going to go in and click the view button to go into our new catalog. Right, so obviously our catalog's empty because we've just created it, and we're going to start adding products with the green plus button. So what we're going to do here is search from our master catalog. You can see the 45,000 pages of it with 25 products a page. So let's start searching. We're going to do Barramundi. Oh, it's 1 R, isn't it? Oh. No, Mundi. Oh, 2 R's. Oh, dear. Barramundi fillet, for example. Now, the more specific you can be, probably the better, because here you can see we do have 25 pages. If it is a particular brand you're looking for, definitely search by brand. But in this case, I actually want to search for an unbranded product. So I'm just going to click on the brand header, and you can see it will filter it so all the unbranded ones come to the top. All right, so I want skin off. Here we go. Okay, Barramundi fillet, wild, skin off, by the kilo. Yep, perfect. So once I've found the description I want to use, I'm going to click on what is called the picker icon, sometimes known as the dinosaur, and I'm going to add that description to my catalog. So let's also search for some bluefin tuna, maybe. Tuna, bluefin, yeah, 1 kilo, average weight, 400 to 600. Yeah, that'll do. This one will do. Again, to pick the hand icon. Now, if you know that your local supplier is selling the same product as some of your market boomer suppliers, so the guys that are on the system, and you want to get price comparison between the two, we're going to need to use the exact same product description. For the system to know we're talking about the exact same product, we need to use the exact same description. So what we'll do is actually filter our search results. We're not just going to look from the master catalog now. What we're going to do, I'm going to delete my search term. We're actually going to filter our products by my suppliers, and then in the source, you're going to type in the supplier name of the supplier that you know is selling that same product that you want the price comparison with. So let's say, let's do Zeus. So what we're gonna see now is the 31 pages of Zeus's catalog. Okay, and we can see we've got multiple quotes on the system already for these products. So if we pick one of these products, because we're using the exact same description, it means that we'll get that price comparison. So when we price this item, our number of quotes will increase. Okay. So do we have any fish in here? Probably not. Oh, fish lifter. Okay. I don't know what that is, but yeah. So we'll pick that item. We'll also do some pineapple. Oh, I know it's a seafood supplier, but we'll go with what we've got here. Pineapples, yeah, great. We'll pick that. Yeah, we'll pick a couple different pineapples. Fabulous. So this is how you get the price comparison across multiple suppliers. You can also pick products from another self-managed or buyer-managed pricing supplier. So if we were to go down here, and we can pick products from Alan's Eggs, which was another self-managed pricing. Oh, there's a pianist by the hour. Okay. Or for example, one of our other self-managed pricing catalogs. Like I say, if you want that price comparison, we need the exact same item description. So filtering by my suppliers or buyer managed pricing, you will easily be able to find those exact descriptions, much easier than if you're searching through the master catalog. Okay. So once we've picked our products, oh, hang on, before we go into that. If there is a product description that you can't find, so for example, like our unicorn steak, we can go in and create that item as an informal product. Now, ideally, you will be able to find your item from the master catalog, because if that's the only way you're going to get price comparison on items. If we create our own descriptions, we're not going to get price comparison on that because that item is unique to you at your property. Okay. So, all right, let's go and create our product description, and we do that here in the informal products tab. In Purchase Plus, anything that we consider informal, it means it's not coming from our master database, or it's not pulling from the system. It's something that's kind of unique to your property. Okay. So we'll click on the green plus button. You won't have a green plus button here. That's just for me. This green plus button. And this is the same pop-up that we saw when we were creating an item in an informal requisition, very similar at least. So we must choose a category. So we'll say, oh, no, we're doing meat. Yeah, okay. Meat and poultry, great. The brand, if there is one. The item description. Oh, we're going to unicorn steak. Item size, we're doing it by the kilogram, and it doesn't come in a pack because we're doing meat. We're just saying it's by the kilo. Okay, but again, if it did come in a case of 6 or a packet of 10 or whatever, you would input that information here. Again, if you leave that blank, it will default to each of one. Okay. Again, manufacturer, you don't need to worry about. That's something that we're working on. So once we've done that, we'll hit save, and that product description has now been created, and it will appear alongside our master catalog products here in the catalog products tab. So what we need to do now, if your supplier uses product codes, you can input that here, and that will appear on the purchase order for them. So that would be useful for your suppliers. Now what we're going to do is input the pricing. So again, very important that we input the price that relates to the cell unit. So this will be the kilo price. So I actually have no idea how much barramundi costs. Let's say $25 a kilo. And then really, really important that you input the tax percentage again. So either 0 or 10, depending on what it is. Okay, so our fish lifter, we're going to say that's $4. Jelly pineapples, okay. Lager, that's okay. It's kind of 24. I have no idea. Let's say $50. Pineapples, yeah. Oh, hang on. I need to put the tax in there. Yeah. I'll just do all of these. We'll say, oh no, that's going to be much more expensive, isn't it? And then our unicorn steak, yeah, that's really expensive. Perfect. Now the system is treating these items in exactly the same way as it treats bid foods products or any of those supplier managed products. So let's have a look. We have a question. Once we set up a buy list, why system change supplier from time to time? Nishan, would you mind if we cover that when we, in just a tick, when we talk about the buy list? Because just currently we're in the self-managed pricing. We'll just finish up here and then we'll move on to buy list stuff, if that's okay. Okay, so what you can do, now this is when prices change for these self-managed suppliers, it is obviously up to you to update that pricing because, oh, hang on, Jeff, because your suppliers don't have access to the system. Now, ideally, these suppliers, if they're selling more, if you're buying more than like 20 or so products off them, I would encourage you to invite them to join Purchase Plus so they can manage the product and pricing information in the system themselves. However, that's not always going to be the case. So if there are lots of items in a self-managed catalog, instead of coming in and updating these one by one, you do have the possibility of exporting your self-managed pricing catalog with the green plus button. We will need to refresh the page for the export to show as it's running in the background. If you click on the file name, it will actually download a copy of your self-managed pricing catalog in a spreadsheet format, and this is what it looks like. So let's make this a bit bigger. So what you can actually do is email this to your supplier, and you can ask them to update the pricing in this column. They can't update anything else. Nothing else can be changed here. But if they update the pricing in the column and email it back to you, you can then actually come and import that file straight back into the system, and it will update all that pricing. So that's another way you can lean on your suppliers to help you with this self-managed pricing update by just emailing them this export, the pricing being updated, and then you will need to import that back into the system. The supplier cannot do it, again, because they do not have a Purchase Plus login, and that's why it's self-managed pricing. Okay. Right, we had a question from Jeff. Once we set up a new catalog products, will they just remain visible, unique to our property? Yes, they will, Jeff, unless it's something that's set up at the Qantas level. So at the head office, on the head office account, if they set up a self-managed pricing catalog at the head office account, that information will be available to all the Qantas properties. But yeah, the new kind of self-managed catalog, if you set this up at Qantas Brisbane or Qantas wherever, that is the only property that it will be enabled for. you can share this information across accounts. Again, if you export your catalog and you want to share it with the domestic lounge, you can export it, email it to them, and they can import it themselves, and it will basically copy that catalog across. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jeff? Perfect. Cool. I would highly recommend, and no one ever does it until it's already too late, but I would highly recommend exporting a copy of your self-managed pricing catalogs and saving that file somewhere on your computer or on a Dropbox or something like that, just as a backup copy, just in case anybody comes in and accidentally deletes your self-managed catalog. What you can do then is just import it back in, and it will all be restored. I know no one ever backs up anything until it's already too late, but you have been warned. Okay. All right. So I think that's it for self-managed pricing. Again, just to recap, we added products from the master catalog of descriptions. If we're not worried about price comparison with other suppliers, we can just pick any description that best suits our product. If we do want price comparison with other suppliers, we must filter by supplier, my suppliers or buyer managed pricing, and select our supplier here to ensure that we get the exact same product description for that price comparison to work. Okay. For any product descriptions we couldn't find in the system, we created an informal product, and then all we did was put pricing and tax percentage in here. Again, you can input product codes as well. And then we just exported a copy of our catalog that we can potentially send to our suppliers for them to give us our pricing updates. Perfect. All right, so before we move on to buy lists, I'm going to be quiet just for a couple seconds, just to give anyone a chance to pop in any questions they have in the chat. All right then, so let's move on to buy lists, and I cannot stress enough how much buy lists are really the key to Purchase Plus. Remember, this is how we're getting our price comparison on our items, and this is how we're going to filter all the products available to us by only what we want to see. Okay? I know a lot of chefs, just out of habit, use My Supplier Requisitions, where you're only ordering directly from one supplier's catalog, but that's really means you have to trawl through a lot of stuff that you're probably not interested in. So this is really a way to speed up your ordering. Now, I'm not going to lie, potentially, depending on how many different products you're using, it can take a little while to build your buy list, but the return on your time investment is going to be really quick. It's going to be really quick. So let's go in and create a new buy list. So we're going to click on the green plus button. We're going to give our buy list a name. Now, I highly recommend calling it, again, having some kind of convention. I'd call it your department name or your lounge name or whichever outlet you're in, or you can work that convention out between yourselves. Food, and this is going to be fruit and veg. If you would like to set a default department and account code, we can do that here. Now, again, you may, if you're sharing this buy list across several different departments, you may not want to set a default, but I'm going to in this case. Let's look for my GL code. I'm not going to set a default one. Custom sorted, we'll have a look at once we're in the buy list already. So we've created our buy list, so we're going to go in and view it with the I button. All right, so our buy list is empty, so we're going to start adding items with the green plus. Now, this is the same pop-up as we saw before. However, this time it's performing a slightly different function. Before we were just looking for any product descriptions that we wanted to add to our self-managed catalog, but now we're adding products to our buy list. We only want to add items that have quotes. Okay, we do not want to add items that have 0 of 0 quotes, because what that means is that none of your suppliers are quoting on that item, and if they are supplying it, you will need to input the product, the price, tax percentage, and supplier information every single time. So really, on your buy list, you only want stuff with quotes in it. Okay. Now, at the moment, we still have the whole master catalog displayed. The first filter I would apply would be this, the priced only filter. So if we tick that box and then hit the search button, we'll see now that's reduced down quite a lot. So what this is now displaying is only products with quotes from the suppliers that we're linked to on Purchase Plus, or those that we've built into that self-managed pricing. All right. So if you're looking for a product and you don't really know who sells it, or you don't really care who you buy it from, you're just looking for something, we can start searching, and this is going to search from all your suppliers. So what am I going to search for? Mint. Okay. Mint bunch. Oh. Perfect. Mint, one bunch. There you go. So, and here I've got 4 of 4 quotes. The cheapest of the quotes being $1.05. If you want to see the other quotes, just click on the quotes themselves, and you can see the different suppliers and their different pricing, and whether they're supplier managed or self-managed. Okay. So again, I'm just going to click on the little picker icon. I'm going to get some Vietnamese mint as well. I'm also going to look for, I don't know, well, we'll do that next. Right. So that's if I don't really know what supplier I want to get stuff from, and I'm just kind of having a look what's in the system. I'll have that one as well. More often than not, though, when you're building your buy list, it's probable that you know who you get that stuff from. Okay, so again, we're going to filter our search results, and we're going to choose first my suppliers. And then again, in the source, we're going to type in the supplier name whose catalog we want to look through. So again, now we're looking at the 30 pages of Zeus's catalog, all of which have quotes in the product. And we're going to start searching. So let's say we want some lemons. Not lemonade, lemons, medium. Perfect. Now, do note here, it's gone, so pineapple. Do note here that even though we filtered by supplier catalog, we are not saying that we only want to buy this product from this supplier. We are purely picking our product descriptions, and we can see here that we have multiple quotes on these items. So we're not limiting who we're buying this stuff from. It's just a way that we're picking our products and the appropriate products from the system. So now, remember, because we can have products from multiple suppliers on the same requisition in the same buy list, we can start flicking between suppliers. So let's say, what have I got in Allen's eggs? Oh, that was the pianist, wasn't it? Oh, that's a self-managed one. Hang on. Have we got ALM? Oh, I'm going to need to refresh my page, aren't I? Let's try again. Oh, I don't have any products for them. Oh, I can't think of who else I've got. Maybe I've got some beard food pricing on here. No? Okay. Well, in that case, I'm going to switch my source type to my buyer managed pricing. And what I'll be able to do now is select any source type being the self-managed pricing catalogs I've created. And this is the one that we created just now. I'm going to add my pineapples in here, my unicorn steak, and my bluefin tuna. All right. You can also, if you like the look of the products on someone else's buy list, you can select buy list as a source, and then select another buy list from your account and pick products from there as well. Right. Now, one thing worth mentioning, we are only looking, we're only using the search here to look for product detail or product description. So especially when we're talking about suppliers like Bunzl that use, for example, in the Bunzl catalog, their online portal, their invoices and the descriptions on Purchase Plus, the descriptions vary between all the documents. So especially for Bunzl, but other suppliers like this, sometimes it's easier to search for products by product code, okay? Because then you know you're getting the exact product if you're using the product code and you're not second guessing because the description is maybe different from the one you're used to seeing. So definitely worth for suppliers like that, especially suppliers with big catalogs, using supplier product code as your search. So that is adding items to your buy list. If, for example, you one day go and raise a requisition and the pricing has dropped off a product and all of a sudden it's showing 0 of 0, that means that your supplier is not quoting on that product anymore, and you will need to come in and find a replacement product, okay? And all it is doing is you would delete the 0 of 0 product and come and find a replacement product in the exact way that we just looked at. So you'd come in and search by My Suppliers and change your source to the supplier you want to add the product for and search from there. Now, if you're halfway through a requisition when you realize the pricing has dropped off, if you come into the buy list window in a new tab, you can update your buy list on the fly, and when you go back to your requisition, if you refresh the page, that new product will now appear in your requisition. So you don't need to go and raise a whole new requisition to update the buy list. It will kind of automatically flow through. So I know we had a question from Nishan. Once you set the buy list, why does the system change suppliers from time to time? So if it's that the supplier changes, the default supplier changes on your buy list requisition, what that means is that the pricing has changed and a different supplier is the cheapest one, which is why the default one changes. It will always default to the cheapest supplier. Okay. So we can see here we have, oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. So multiple quotes on these items. When we were raising our buy list requisition, we saw an example where, for example, it was 1 of 5 and 4 quotes had been blocked. Now, the time I see this being used most is if, for example, the cheapest supplier, maybe the quality isn't quite there, and it means that every time you raise a requisition, you need to change the supplier for that line, which is not particularly efficient. What I would recommend doing in this case is blocking that supplier just for that one product. So let's do it for this Sage product. So all we're going to do, next to the product, we're going to click on the little cog icon, and we can enable or disable this one of these suppliers just for this individual product, just on this buy list. Okay. So let's say I don't ever want to get it from the local supermarket, so I'm going to untick that, and then what we will see, which product was it? Oh, this one, this Sage. Now we can see it's 4 of 5. So it won't, when raising my requisition, it will not let me select the local supermarket as my supplier. If that were the cheapest supplier, then the system will default to the next cheapest available supplier. Okay. So definitely worth tweaking your buy list here, especially if it's for quality purposes and whatnot, or contracted pricing or what have you. You can enable and disable only certain suppliers for individual products. If, however, you've got a fruit and veg buy list and you've got multiple quotes, but in reality you only want to order from maybe 2 different suppliers, we can enable only those 2 suppliers on the entire list. So you don't need to go one by one disabling the ones you're not interested in. So if we want to limit how many suppliers can quote on this buy list, we go up here to this Catalog Supplier Choices tab. So what we're going to do is search for the suppliers we want to enable. By default, everyone is enabled, okay? As soon as we start ticking 1 or 2 suppliers, they will be the only ones that are enabled. So let's do, I'm also going to enable my supplier training. Oh, they're not on this list. Okay, that's fine. As my local supermarket, brilliant. So now I've enabled only those 2 suppliers. Everyone else will be disabled. So when we go back to our catalogued products tab, we'll see all the quotes from everybody else have all dropped off. Yep. So that's one way to, another way to kind of limit what quotes are available depending on your supplier selection. Okay. I'm going to go back and enable everybody again. So I'm just going to untick that. And then if I now go back to my catalog products tab, we're going to see they're all enabled again. All right. Okay. Down here, oh, before we go any further, does anyone have any questions about blocking suppliers on individual product lines or only enabling certain suppliers to quote on your entire buy list? Or is everyone fairly happy with that? I'll just be quiet for just a couple seconds. Okay, brilliant. All right, a few other things to have a look at on this in the buy list. First being this pricing history button. This is pretty cool. If you click on this, it will show you every time you've ordered this exact product, when, from who, the price, tax percentage, the quantity ordered, and actually the PO. So this is quite nice for a quick reference of price fluctuation, although we can pull this out in spreadsheet format in one of the reports from Purchase Plus, which we'll have a look at in a little while. The bin button I don't think needs too much explaining, but that's the delete product button icon. So before we start looking at how we get more quotes from our suppliers, a couple of things about setup. So we would normally recommend that you build buy lists by department and by account code. Now, some people like to create a fruit and veg buy list, you know, meat, poultry, dairy and eggs buy list, you know, and have it kind of sectioned by categories. Another way that is becoming fairly popular in how to create buy lists is having literally all your products that you order on the one list, and which might sound a bit overwhelming because you could have potentially, you know, 100 pages. And if you're just doing a fruit and veg order, that would be, you don't want to go searching for each individual product to add in the quantities. So what you can do is actually add in here a product code. So here we'll call this beer. This is beer. This is fruit. This is herbs. This is herbs. So what we're doing here is kind of categorizing our buy list, so we can use this to filter. If we have maybe a 50-page buy list, this one's fruit, this one's herbs, fish, and meat. So what this means now, when you raise a requisition, if you're just doing fruit and veg, what you can do is when you're raising a requisition, you search for the product code, and this is just an internal product code. This doesn't go anywhere or anything like that. This is just an internal reference for you. You can search by product code, and then out of all your products, it's going to bring up only things with the fruit from your fruit list. Or here we'll say we want to order our meat, and then we can put in our quantities without having to go and isolate those individual products and search for each one individually, what that means is if you do all your ordering on the one requisition, it's going to be a beast of a requisition of like $20,000, and that one requisition may generate, 10 different POs. But what that means, it's just one document that goes for approval, and you've got all your stuff. You've got all your stuff in one place, and all linked. And if you only have to raise one requisition instead of having to go back and do your fruit and veg, and then new requisition for your meat and poultry, new requisition for your dairy and eggs. So definitely worth having a little bit of a think about how you prefer to have it set up. Those are really the two main options. What I cannot advocate against enough is not setting your buy list up by supplier. If you're doing that, you're really negating the price comparison function of Purchase Plus. I know it is old habits die hard, right? You place orders by supplier, but that's really not the optimal way to order with a buy list on Purchase Plus. Last thing to look at before we start talking about the import-export process is this custom sorted feature. If we turn it on, for it to activate, we will need to refresh our page. So by default, the items in our buy list appear in the order that we added them, with the first added being at the top. However, it may be that you want to adjust that order that is not just alphabetical. Okay? So when this custom sort function is turned on, we get this little yellow sort button in the bottom left-hand corner. If we click that, it's going to give us the ability to drag and drop the items in our buy list to change the order that they appear on our requisition and in our buy list. So how I see this often used is potentially like if it's a wine buy list, maybe separated into reds, whites, sparkling, what have you. Or if you're talking about fruit and veg, maybe herbs, whatever, all in one spot. Sometimes you even see it, for example, the order that the products appear in your dry goods store. So the order that they appear on the shelf. So as you go round, you can just tap in the quantities as you go around your dry store in the correct order. The really nice thing about this as well is that you can use the print button to print a copy of your buy list, and you can basically use this as your tick sheet. There we go. So this is how it prints out. It's literally just your buy list with a space for your quantities in there. So if you want to pop that up on the pin board in the kitchen or what have you, you can definitely do that. So that's custom sort. It's literally just to change the order of the products that they appear on in your buy list. Okay. Any questions about product code usage or the use of custom sort? I'll be quiet just a moment. Okay, great. So let's talk about the export process. So again, because your buy list can potentially take a little while to create, I highly recommend exporting a copy of your buy list and keeping this file as a backup. All right. Just because, if someone deletes it, you're going to have to start all over again. Whereas if you have this import file, you can just re-import your buy list and it will all be restored. Unfortunately, if someone deletes your buy list, it's actually a hard delete. We can't recover it here at Market Boomer. So definitely keep a backup. Now, let's talk. We did have a question earlier with regards to similar but not exactly the same descriptions. Right? The system to get, as we've discussed, to get multiple quotes on the same item, it must be against the exact description, which can sometimes be the issue. Maybe it's a like-for-like products, but different suppliers have described their item differently, and therefore you're not getting the price comparison on those products. A way we can help with that, and also the same way that we can potentially run a mini tender using Purchase Plus, we would export our buy list, download the file. Let's take a quick look at this, what this looks like. It looks almost exactly the same as a catalog export, except here we don't have a column for price or tax percentage. So we can ignore that for the position. That is the custom sort function. Now, how we know we're talking about the exact same product is this, the PP product ID. And this is a really important concept to understand about Purchase Plus. So the combination of brand, description, unit size, unit measure, unit name, pack quantity, pack name, category, subcategory, locale, is all linked to this number, okay? And this number is basically Purchase Plus identify. This number is how the system knows what exact product we're talking about. So even if we were to delete all of this information, if you tell Purchase Plus it's PP product ID number 11, it knows that it's Sage, right? So how this is useful is if we send this file to our suppliers, there is a user guide on how they can create a catalog import using this file. They just need to add a couple of columns here to put the pricing in. You can go to, I don't know, Select Fresh or whoever you want to get pricing from on these exact products. You could send this out to all of your suppliers, say, hey, can you quote these items and import them into Purchase Plus? When they import them, those quotes will automatically increment. So if you go, Select Fresh, and initially they weren't quoting on this exact item, and then they import that file with the pricing, this would increase to 4 of 4, or 6 of 6, or if you get 5 different suppliers uploading that file, you'll get 5 extra quotes on that item. So that's how you can get better price comparison. It's all about the descriptions and that PP product ID. As I said, if you do want to do that with your suppliers, I highly recommend. It would help if I spell it right. Oh no, it doesn't matter. I would highly recommend you linking in this user guide. It's create a supplier catalog from a buyer's buy list. And this is the step-by-step instructions of the columns they need to add and how to import it into Purchase Plus, all right? You can feel free to loop me into the email in case your suppliers have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer them, right? So that's how you would increase the amount of quotes you're getting, and also how to run kind of a mini tender by using your buy list as a template for your suppliers. As I say, as they start importing them, you can even import this file into your self-managed catalog. If it's a self-managed pricing supplier that you want to be involved in this tender or this quoting process, you can do that too. Brilliant. I think that is your buy list masterclass. I'm sure some of you will probably have questions about this process with the export and the PP product ID and that kind of thing. So again, I'm just going to keep quiet just for a couple of seconds to give any of you a chance to pop your questions in the chat. After the break, we'll have a look at recipe management and also the reporting functions in Purchase Plus. Okay, perfect. Right, the final stretch. You've all done so well to still be connected. So that's really good. So what we're going to cover now, the last part, we're going to be looking at recipe management, and then we'll have a look at some of the reporting functions in Purchase Plus and some of the reports we can perform. So recipe management has its own section of the menu, and there's kind of 2 subsections. The first one being menus. Okay, menus you do not need to strictly think about as a menu, like your winter menu or whatever. You can do. I suggest thinking about menus as a filing system. Okay, a recipe can only sit under one menu. All right. How some properties have current recipes, old recipes. Some manage it by type of food, Some actually follow strictly their menus. The reason we group recipes into menus is this is how we're going to manage our recalculation of costs. Okay, we do that by menu or by individual recipe. But yeah, so new menus, old menus by type of food or however. It's just your filing system for your recipes. So if you wanted to create a new menu, obviously it's just the green plus button and you give it a name, hit enter to save. Oh, I've already got one called new menu, apparently. Okay, new menu 2. There we go. We can create recipes here from the recipes tab, or we can go into our menu and create a recipe from there, but I'm going to do it from the recipe section of the menu. Okay, so here we've got all of our recipes. We're going to create a new recipe with the green plus button. We'll give it a name. What are we making today? A whiskey sour. It's a cocktail, and we need to select which menu we're putting it into, so the beverage. Once we filled that out, we hit enter to save, and then we're going to go in and view our recipe. Okay, so here we go. In the body of our recipe, we need to start adding products with the green plus button. Now, this is really, really important. To get accurate pricing on your recipe, accurate costing, it's really important that we select products that are contained within our buy list, all right? Because if we're selecting products that aren't in our buy list, it may not be our pricing. So we want to make sure we're using ingredients of products, the products we're actually purchasing, okay? If you just add pricing from wherever, it's probably not the products that you're using and therefore paying a different price for. So really, really important. So we're going to tick the in buy list box, and we're going to start searching for our ingredients. So let's look for some whiskey. I want bourbon. Oh, I don't have any. Okay, that's fine for now. Whiskey, malt whiskey. Oh, okay, perfect. 12-year-old bottle. Brilliant. We're going to click on the picker icon to add it. Okay, what else goes? Lemon juice. Let's just say lemons then. Lemons medium. There we go. What else? Oh, I can't even think. Sugar syrup. Oh, that's golden syrup. Now, I know that I created already a recipe for sugar syrup. So we can actually use a recipe that we've already created as a sub-recipe. So if I type in there syrup, here's my sugar syrup recipe, and I'm going to pick that as an ingredient. Perfect. What else goes in? Eggs. Egg white we want in there. Eggs, large, 1 dozen. Perfect. We're going to pick that. Brilliant. I think that's about it. So once we've added all of our ingredients, we need to tell Purchase Plus how much of those ingredients are going into our recipe. Okay. So for our whiskey, how many mil? I'd say, 30 mil. Perfect. Lemons. Oh, what weight of lemon? I'd say probably, I don't know, half a lemon. How many grams is that? Let's say 100 grams. Now we can see it's splitting off the cost because it knows the price of the lemons, and therefore it knows the price of 100 grams of lemons, which is 16 cents. Our sugar syrup, I'm going to put in maybe 25 mil, which comes at a cost of 1 cent. And then, oh, I've got no pricing on my eggs. This indicates that the pricing has dropped off, so it can't calculate the cost. So I'm going to go in and need to find a different a different egg description. Bear with me one. Oh, hang on. Egg, tomatoes, Roma, egg. Oh, the only eggs I have in my buy list. All right. So I'm going to go and do exactly what I just told you not to do. Oh, let's put in some quail eggs, shall we? Make it, okay, perfect. Oh, that hasn't got pricing. Oh, dear. All right, we'll skip the eggs in this whiskey sour. That's fine. So once we've got our products in here or our ingredients in here and we've portioned them out, we can also input a yield percentage. So for example, my lemons, I'm actually going to use 100 grams of lemon, but out of that, I'm only going to get 50 grams of juice, for example. So that's a yield percentage of only 50%. So when I hit enter to save, you'll see here the cost double. Yeah, there we go. So for example, if you're using potatoes, but then you peel them, which means you're only going to get a 90% yield, if you input that in here, it will adjust the cost accordingly. Okay. So we can see here at the top, we've got our cost price. If we input our retail price here, it will also calculate our cost percentage for us. If this is a recipe that we are creating to use as a sub-recipe, we must input here at the top the total amount that this recipe creates in order for the system to be able to split it down. So for example, when I created my sugar syrup recipe, I created potentially like a liter. I input the ingredients for a liter of sugar syrup, and now I'm using it as a sub recipe. The system knows, because I told it up here I'm making 1 liter. When I choose here to input 25 mil, it knows how to kind of split that cost down by measure. Okay. We have here tabs for preparation and presentation. These are just free text fields that you can copy and paste in preparation instructions. The same with presentation, exactly the same. So you come in here and input that. We can also, if we go back to our recipes page, we can also upload a photo. And you do that by clicking on the edit button and uploading an image here. And the really nice thing is I've got one here I made earlier, Tom Collins. If we go and have a look at this Tom Collins, I know I input everything here. It consolidates all that information into a recipe card, which if you print it out, we can see what it looks like. So here you go, you've got a recipe card with a photo, with all your pricing, ingredients, yield, preparation, and presentation all in one place. So I think that's a really cool little feature. What is even cooler is that the system, because we're using live dynamic pricing from our suppliers, the system knows when there's price changes, and therefore recalculating your costs is literally a click of a button. No more Excel spreadsheets updating prices manually and all that kind of thing. We can recalculate pricing by individual recipe, or we can actually also recalculate entire menus in one click. So if we go into our beverage menu, we can recalculate all the costs. I only recalculated yesterday afternoon, so these probably aren't going to change. And what this does here, so this is indicated that the pricing has dropped off one product, so we will need to go and find the replacement product, which we will have also probably already added to our buy list. Okay. We can also run reports. We can run reports on just the cost percentage, sale price, and whatnot of our recipes, and we can also export the information on each individual ingredient in our recipe. So if I just download an old report just to show you here. So here we can see, so here's our vodka soda. So we can see our vodka and our soda and the cost here and when that was last calculated compared to the retail and cost price. So you can really get this all down to line item information, which is, I think, is pretty cool for any analysis or anything that you need to send off to whoever. And that is recipe management. There's really not much to it. I think it's really intuitive, and if you put in the effort to input your recipes, again, might take a little while to set up, but what then it eliminates is that monthly task or bi-weekly task of manually recalculating all your recipe costs, because the system does it all for you, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, that's recipe management. Before we move on to the reporting function of Purchase Plus, does anyone have any questions? Let's have a look at oh no, we do have a question. I was a bit too quick. Can the recipes be shared between ports? Currently not. Currently not. We have no way to export recipes currently, purely because it's based on your buy list product. So it's only useful if you're still, if you're using the exact same products in your buy list, or it won't recalculate the pricing, because if you're using a different product in the recipe to what's on your buy list, you're not going to get accurate pricing on it. It is something that we are looking into. I believe that if you create a recipe under in the Qantas, at the Qantas headquarters level, then that will flow down to each of the sites. But there's no way, like with the buy list, to export and import. We can't do that. But if you create them at the Qantas level, you will all have access to view them. But as I say, pricing might not be, unless you're using the exact same products in your buy list, the pricing may not be accurate. It's the only thing. Perfect. Okay. Reporting, or what in Purchase Plus we call snapshots. So under the dashboard section of the menu, you'll see this snapshot section. There are about 60 different reports you can run in Purchase Plus. I highly recommend you just jump in and just have a poke around, have a play. You're not limited to how many reports you can run. I'm going to look at just probably 2 or 3 of my favorite reports. And then if you have any requests for which report do you see, what information, I can definitely answer those questions. So my all-time favorite report is this invoice lines and credit note lines snapshot. So just click on it to go in. We can see all our historical, you know what, I'm actually going to log into Qantas Sydney. Should we do international? Yeah, why not? And here, is this one? Yeah, so here's a report I ran yesterday. So let's just, oh, hang on, I skipped ahead a bit. Is that yesterday? Oh, yeah, that's 2018. Okay, wow. All right, so to run a new report, like with everything on Purchase Plus, it's the green plus button. Input your date range. So let's just look at this month. These filters, if you don't touch them, it will just search for everything. So if I just leave all these blank, it will just search for everything. But if you prefer, you can filter by all of these different things. So once I hit save, we can see my report is open. So what that means is it's running in the background. You just need to count to 5 before refreshing your page. There we go, perfect. All right, so let's download this. Okay, so this report is pretty hefty. We are looking now at every line of every invoice in the system between the date range that we specified in that report. So this was the month of July. So we've got the document type, the invoice number, any purchase orders it's linked to, any credit notes, the purchaser name, supplier name, if it's a preferred supplier, all this stuff. I won't go through each individual column because we'll be here all day, just the important ones. So if we have a look here, this will show us our total ordered quantity versus our invoiced quantity, all right? So if we insert a column just here and we call this variance, we can do a really quick sum here. And if we pull this down, oh wow, there's lots of, okay, we don't need to do the whole thing. And we'll say, if it's, we'll apply some conditional formatting, and we'll say, if it is less than 0, we're going to make it red. And if it's more than, where's more than, greater than 0, we're going to put it in green, let's say, or yellow. Okay, so this will highlight the variance. So this will show you really easily which suppliers are maybe not giving you everything you've ordered. I mean, that's kind of an issue, right? They're not fulfilling their orders, and which suppliers are sending you more than you ordered. You'll see very quickly any kind of consistency across this. So then that's a conversation potentially to have with your supplier or, you know, internally. Same thing with order price. This is the unit price on the PO versus the unit price on the invoice itself. So again, you may want to put a variance column in here, and you say, all right, it's this one minus this one. And again, this will display to you any price discrepancies that are happening. Again, if you see kind of consistent offenders, that would be a conversation that you might want to have. If we scroll along a little bit further, we've got our item descriptions and categories and line total, the department name, the account codes, all of that stuff. This report really has virtually everything in it. It's pretty cool. So obviously, because this is kind of hefty to do any analysis on just as is, I'd probably recommend creating a pivot table or something for those of you that like to do your work in Excel. So what I'm going to do, I want probably department name, and then I'm going to do supplier name, maybe. Supplier name. And then I'm going to do item description. Where's that item description? And then I'm going to do, then I'm going to do values. I'm going to do line total X tax. And then in the filters, I'm going to add the account code. Oh. Where is it? Account code. Okay, so what I've got here for the month of July, I've got total spend. Super easy. By department. So I've got my total spend and then my spend by department. Then I'm going to drop down and from the departments into by supplier. Oh, can I? Oh, let's just make some of these a bit. So then I've got my spend by supplier, for example. Then if I drop down from my supplier, I can see here all the products I've bought for them and at what my total spend is. You can also add here, if you wanted to have a look at quantities, we could also add a value for where's my quantity? Invoice quantity, sell unit. order price, unit price, quantity. There we go. Yeah, perfect. So we can see I've ordered 12.5 kilo bags of almond kernels, and that's what I've spent in this time. So you can do, I definitely recommend having a play around with this report. It's pretty cool, the kind of stuff. You can then kind of put average price instead of sum price, all that kind of thing. But that's a really nice way to kind of sort this report, because it's so kind of data intense. You'd spend all day trying to analyze this kind of manually. So pivot table is a really nice way of looking at that. Another one of the reports I really like, and this could be of a real help to those of you that are thinking you might want to reorganize your buy lists. This report that is called Who Bought What? It does not tell you who bought what. Okay, so I'm not quite sure why it's called that. What it will tell you is highest, lowest, last. So again, if you want to run a new report, the green plus button, but for the sake of speed, I'm just going to download one of the ones that Linda's already run. Okay, so here we go. This is what, let's zoom in a little bit. Here we go. Oh, there we go. All right, so we've got the purchaser, category, subcategory, product, which we'll talk about in just a sec. Obviously, the product description itself, the supplier you purchased it from, the quantity that you ordered from the supplier, the net amount, the last price paid, highest price paid, and lowest price paid within the given date range that we set when we ran this report. So this will look at high and low kind of costings as well as last price. So that can be quite interesting to see some fluctuation and price difference between suppliers. Okay. Now, what I really like about this report is column D, product. This is your PP product ID that we saw earlier in your buy list, right? So you could potentially, if you copy and paste all of these product IDs into your buy list template and import that, you can just create a buy list with all of these products in one place. So this is a really nice way to identify very, very easily your order history on the system and how you can import that just into your buy list, and it will like auto populate. Instead of you having to go through kind of item by item and searching for them, you've got all that information already here. And it's also sorted by category and subcategory as well. So if you are thinking about maybe reworking your buy list, which I would definitely encourage, and you want a little bit of help on the way to best kind of manage that or do that, definitely get in touch with the team, either via the help chat in Purchase Plus, or ping us an email, or pop me an email, give me a call, that kind of thing. Perfect. So that's a Who Bought What report. And then the last one, oh, no, wrong thing. The last one I wanted to have a look at is probably the accrual report. So this will show you, here we go. So to run the accrual report, again, green plus button, you put in your date range. I highly recommend changing the date search field to any date. The reason being that if you have any documents that aren't linked, if you choose invoice date, it's only going to show invoices. If there's POs not attached to that invoice, it won't show them. Process date, same. It's going to search only for invoices. Sent date, that's just the purchase order. So if the purchase order hasn't been linked to its invoice for whatever reason, that invoice isn't going to show up. If we search any date, it's going to search all documents. All right? But again, to save some time, I'm just going to run one of these or download one of these reports that's already been run. I think this is it. Yeah, here we go. All right, so we've got our PO number, invoice number, supplier, the state of the PO and the state of the invoice, the dates received, etc., and the account codes. So this is how finance can you know, quickly and easily run their accrual report. So if you want to have a look quickly if there's any POs missing invoices or what have you, without having to kind of scroll through Purchase Plus itself, you can just pull this accruals report and you'll see very quickly, you know, what's if any documents are missing or anything like that. Yeah. As I said, there's a ton of reports in Purchase Plus, so I really just recommend having a play around. If you've got questions, like you want to get specific data out of the system, like I say, pop it in the help chat and we'll be able to advise you which report might be best or which reports. Yeah. Perfect. So I think that concludes the reporting function on Purchase Plus. As I said, we're not going to go into each one individually because we'll be here all day. So thank you very much, Sam. So everyone, I think that we'll call it a day. We have been recording this session, so I will make sure the video goes out. And of course, got any more questions or anything like that, please let us know.